Hey there, welcome to the Dare to Begin Small and Mighty podcast. I'm your host, Amy Van Meel, and I'm here to inspire and teach entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs how to create a business without miring in overwhelm. If you're wrestling with the day-to-day biz stuff, you are in the right place because that's the kind of stuff that we talk about here. With that, let's dive right on in. Well, hey there, good morning. It is on the day of this recording, officially the first day of spring, and I'm reminded of there's a scene in Friends where there's the guy singing right outside of Joey's room, and he's like, morning's here, and that's kind of what I feel like saying today. I'll be honest, I always have mixed feelings about spring. It's the dirtiest season as far as I'm concerned. So I never enjoy walking outside and getting covered in mud or the fact that my car is completely dirty. But on the other hand, I do love playing in the puddles. I never ever outgrew that. And I love that it's warm. I love the warm breezes. I always find spring is such a funny thing in the sense that if it's 12 degrees Celsius in the fall, everybody's like, oh my goodness, it's so cold outside. And we're all bundled up and we've got scarves and mitts and toques on. And yet if it's 12 degrees in the spring, everybody's like, oh my goodness, it's so nice outside. And we're sitting on the patio and we're wearing shorts and we're just so excited that it's spring. So I always find it really unique. The other thing that I'm a little bit disappointed when it comes to spring is that it marks the end of ski season. So if you don't know this already, I am a die-hard skier, and we just came back from a weekend in Fernie, BC, which is a fantastic hill to ski. If you've never had the chance, I definitely recommend it. With the beginning of spring and the weather getting warmer, it also means that the snow on the ski hills are starting to melt, and that's always a little bit sad for me. I enjoy summer, but I do miss ski season. So here's hoping that I'll get a few more days out to make a few more turns before the season is officially over. It's been super warm where I live, so that might not happen. We shall see. So I mentioned that last weekend I was skiing in Fernie, BC, and I love Fernie Ski Hill. I'm a girl from Manitoba, which is in the dead center of Canada. Manitoba is not known for epic skiing. It is known for wide open, beautiful prairies and really cold winters. So moving to Calgary, where I live now, was quite the difference because anywhere I go in the city, I see mountain views, and I'm literally an hour's drive away from the mountains. So since moving here a few years ago, I believe it's coming on 5 years next month, which is kind of crazy to me, I have taken up skiing. So I skied about 5 or 6 days in my entire life before ever coming out to Calgary. And when I skied, I was skiing in Manitoba. And like I said, Manitoba is not known for having big mountains. Manitoba is known for flat prairies. And they do have some ski hills there. And if you've ever skied in the mountains and now you're thinking, oh, I'll go out to Manitoba. Yeah, the skiing's not the same. So when I moved out here, my guy is a huge skier. He's been skiing literally longer than I've been on the planet. And it's really daunting when you go out with someone who's been skiing for so long, who's been doing something that you're really just getting started at for so much longer than you. And to top it off, everybody that he knows all say that he's the best skier that they know. So, it's kind of like taking up tennis and starting playing with Serena Williams. I mean, he's not pro level or anything, but he's very, very good. So when I was growing up in rural Manitoba, I remember seeing other kids in my class coming back from exotic places like Lake Louise or Big White or Panorama. They would have the ski tags hanging off of their jackets, and I was so jealous. I just thought that would be the most amazing thing, and I wished every time I saw those, I wish I have a life one day where I get to be skiing in the mountains all the time. That would be so amazing. I would love that. And remember, I'd never skied a day in the mountains. I'd skied a few days, like a handful of days at local ski hills, and that was it. So I didn't have any idea what that was supposed to be like. I just knew that I wanted it really badly. So since moving here and obviously having a partner who loves to ski makes a huge difference. But since moving here, I now spend almost every weekend at the ski hill. And when I post pictures on Facebook or I share pictures on Instagram, I often get friends from back in Manitoba that are just like, your pictures make me so jealous. I wish I could be there. I wish I was skiing in the mountains. And my response is always the same. You're always welcome to come out. Just let me know when you're coming. Now, as I mentioned, I am not originally from Alberta. And I've already said that I did not grow up learning how to ski. So when I moved here, I had to learn pretty much from the ground up at 31 years old how to do a sport that really requires a lot of risk. And that's what I've been thinking about while I was out at Fernie last weekend and making turns. And Fernie's always a challenge for me. I was constantly thinking about the idea of risk and reward. And that's what I want to talk about today. So if you've been wondering why the heck I'm talking about skiing for the last 5 minutes, here's why. So learning how to ski was a huge risk for me. I mean, at 31, I was old enough to know the dangers that are inherently part of the sport. I was not made of rubber anymore. I love watching little kids on the ski hill. I mean, they're fearless. They're 2 feet off the snow. So I always think, well, it's easy for you to be fearless. I mean, if you fall, you don't have very far to fall. I have a few extra feet to make it before I hit the ground. So starting something like that requires a fair number of skill at I wouldn't say advanced age, but at a later stage in my life, does include a fair amount of risk. That said, I am now in my 5th season and I've become a fairly advanced intermediate skier. I can navigate through most terrain, and I'm by no means am I like a backcountry or hella skiing kind of skier. I'm not that good, but you could pretty much drop me anywhere on the ski hill and I could probably make my way down. So when I first came out to the mountains, the very first time that my guy brought me to the mountains for a ski day, in his infinite wisdom, he insisted that I take a ski lesson. And I'll be totally honest with you guys here. When we pulled into the parking lot and I saw that mountain stretching for what seemed like miles above our heads, I could have lost my breakfast in the parking lot. I was so nervous, and I knew that I wanted to try it. I knew that I loved skiing, but I'd never seen anything so big in my life. And I mean, the ski hills in Manitoba, everything is just a lot closer to the ground. So I had to overcome a lot of fear that day. I was afraid of heights. I was terrified of being on the chairlift. How do I know if I can get on? What if I fall off in the middle of the ride somewhere? Or how do I get off without becoming a total mess or making a total fool of myself? I'd never been on any of this terrain before. Could I actually handle it? I had no idea. Then, of course, there was the very real possibility of, breaking my leg or my arm or my entire self that was very deeply rooted in my brain. And every time I would do something that was a little bit like, whoa, that would definitely pop up in my head. So I had to continually overcome those and believe in the fact that I could do this, and I needed to have a level of trust in the instructor as well, that he would not lead me astray and bring me somewhere that was completely out of my depth. Now, I still wrestle with the idea of risk and some of those fears every time I go skiing. And like I said, I am in my 5th season. So here's what I love about Fernie. I already said it's a hill that challenges me. My home hill is a fairly decent beginner hill. It has great terrain and it will challenge, even the best skiers at times, but it is by no means of the caliber that Fernie is, or Lake Louise is, or Kimberley, or Kicking Horse. If you're familiar with any of those hills, they are more challenging hills. So going out to Fernie the first time, here I was coming from my home hill and thinking, all right, I kind of got this. I'm starting to figure this out. And the first time I was on the hill at Fernie, I'm just like, oh my goodness, I am so out of my depth. And everybody around me was doing it way better. I'm like, wow. Here I thought, I finally sort of had this. I was starting to look like a fairly proficient skier where I regularly ski, and now I'm in a whole different pool with people who are way better than me. Now, if this is starting to sound familiar, stay with me here because I know this will tie across for you. So this year marks I believe, the third season that we have been at Fernie for a ski weekend. So on average, in a winter, I only get 2 days on the ski hill at Fernie. And every time I know that it's a challenge, so every time I need to sort of psych myself up and get ready to go and really just believe in myself. I have to believe that I can take on the risk that is inherent in this new terrain. Last year we got there. Now, I'd never skied powder before. Like, I don't even think I'd ever seen 2 inches of fresh snow on the ground. And when we arrived at Fernie last year, we had 54 centimeters of the most perfect powder you could ever imagine. I was super excited because everybody else was talking about how awesome it was. And then I got on the ski hill and went, oh my goodness, this is a crazy, huge amount of work. I had to get used to the fact that I just couldn't see my skis. I couldn't see my feet. I almost couldn't see my knees at time. And trust that my equipment and my body was doing what it was supposed to without me being able to see it. Even if I don't ski staring at my feet, but you can see them in your peripheral vision. Not in 54 centimeters of powder, you can't. You just got to trust that they're still on there and trust that your skis are still attached to your boots, because there's no way to know for sure until you come out and you're at this chairlift getting ready to load again. Now, some days when I'm at the ski hill, I can challenge risk, like a new run or different terrain, with great confidence, and I really power through. I can stand at the top of a run and think, oh, I totally got this. Like, this would be no problem for me. I've definitely skied something like this before. And then there's days where I really have to talk myself into it, where I'm just like, oh my goodness, I'm really not sure that I can do this. I don't know if I have the skill set to handle the terrain. And can we even see the rest of the run? What if I get somewhere and I can't handle it? Then what do I do? And then there's days where I just know I don't have it. I just don't have it in me that day to take on huge risk. It could be because my legs are really tired. It could be because the conditions are just far more challenging than I feel comfortable working with. And it can also be, often it can be literally my mental game. My mindset is just not in it. My mind is not ready to push me through it. And when your mind's not with you, when you're not ready to mentally work through that challenge, no matter how hard you try, it's really hard to get your body to try something. And like I said, with skiing, the risk is very real. It's not a matter of like, okay, I'll fall down and that'll be okay. It could be, I'll fall down, I'll slide halfway down the mountain, I could end up in a tree well, I could hit my head, I could break my leg, I could take out a kid on the way down, I could lose my skis and never find them again, I could break my arm, the list goes on and on and on. And if I let it, that will definitely sideline me. So this past weekend, when we were out at Fernie, there is a chairlift that goes to the very top. It's called the Polar Peak Chairlift. And I had seen this chairlift all the times that I've been there before. I definitely seen it. It wasn't often running because it kind of needed to be perfect conditions. It couldn't be too windy and it couldn't be too cold. And it's right beside an avalanche area. So the conditions need to be right in order for that chair to be operational. This year, it was perfect weather. It was something like -2 degrees, bright sunshine, barely a breath of wind. It couldn't have been any more perfect. So my guy and I are skiing and he looks over and he says, hey, what do you think if we try to do the Polar Peak chair today? And I looked at the chair and I swear the mountain grew 10 times taller. And I'm like, can we come back to that? My mind needs to just wrap itself around that right now. Because up until this point, that had never been a possibility for me. I had never looked at that chair and thought, oh yeah, I could totally do that. Absolutely, I can do that. So a few years ago, this always makes me laugh. I was skiing at Lake Louise with a dear friend of mine, and I love skiing with her. We're very evenly matched, but I think we both challenge each other nicely as well. So it's just the two of us. It's a girls' day at Lake Louise skiing, and we decide to take a chairlift that comes up the back of the mountain and carries you over a fairly advanced bowl. And at one point, I'm quite certain this chairlift is about 100 feet off the ground. if you've ever been on a chairlift, you'll know that basically your only seatbelt is a bar that you pull down in front of you, and that's it. It's not, every time I'm on one of these things, I'm just like, I am shocked that there aren't more deaths off of a chairlift because, I mean, it's not the most safe thing you'd think, right? It's just a bar that literally I could lift up and just jump off. So we're sitting on the chairlift, and all of a sudden, neither one of us had ever ridden this chair before. All of a sudden, we realize how far up off the hill we are, and we're like, whose idea was this? I swear this was your idea. And of course, my friend's like, no, I'm pretty sure this is your idea. And I'm like, it was probably both our ideas. And what are we doing here now? Like, we're totally freaking out. Anyway, we get on the Polar Peak chair at Fernie, my guy and I. And it's the same kind of thing. It's a chairlift that has just a bar. There are no footrests to hold the bar down, nothing like that, just a bar. And the chair is a fairly basic chair because the volume of people that's on that chairlift isn't so great. They don't have like the really advanced chairs. It's a pretty basic chair. You're going up steeply. So it's a fair distance from where you load the chair, which is already like a long ways up the mountain, to the peak. Skiing is a huge trust exercise. When you reach the top, especially lifts like that, where you're basically being deposited on the peak of a mountain, there's not a huge amount of square footage around you when you arrive. They build a receiving pad, I'll call it, where the chair arrives and pretty much within 3 feet, you're at the level where you need to get off. You get off and you can't see what's beyond when you get there. Literally, as you're coming up to this landing pad, it is nothing but blue sky on the other side. So you're just like, I sincerely hope there's something on the other end of this so that when I jump off, I'm not diving into like a 5,000-foot canyon. I have no idea what's there. It's a huge trust exercise to believe that it's just there. Now, here's the beauty of it. All of that up until this point is risk. I could fall off the chair could break, I could get dizzy, I could get nauseous, anything that could go wrong. The chair could stop working. There isn't a landing platform, or I'll fall somehow and end up hurting myself quite badly. It's all risk. And then you get there and you get off the chair and you feel like, all right, okay, I'm still standing, I got this. And you're rewarded with sweeping views for miles around. We could see mountain ranges that were behind the mountain range that we were skiing on that I'd never seen before. We could see valleys that were miles and miles away. We could see the entire town site down below us. We could see like literally for miles. It was the most breathtaking, amazing view. One of the best I've ever seen. It's so wonderful, and yet as you're walking around on an area that is very small and is fenced off with orange safety fencing all the way around, and all you see is signs of imminent death, fatal fall, do not go past here. Like it's basically a whole bunch of do not pass go or you will croak kind of signs everywhere. So you obviously need to be careful and need to be safe, but in the meantime, you're just seeing this most amazing view. And then, of course, you need to get down. So at this point, we're 7,000 feet above sea level. We are, according to the sign that was at the top of the lift, 3,500 feet, vertical feet from the pub, which was down at the base of the mountain. And I'm like, whew. I don't know if I've ever been 3,500 feet above anything in my life, except for when I was in an airplane. So, and not only that, I need to work my way down this. Now, I love my guy. He always has absolute confidence in my abilities. He doesn't ever put me in situations where he thinks that I couldn't handle it. He knows the terrain. We usually go places where he's skied before, so he knows what to expect. And so he's like, all right, we'd seen the view. He's like, let's get going. I think it's time to go down. And I'm like, go down where? And I could see from before we got on the lift, I knew there was a ski out. I knew we could get off of the top of the hill, but all I could see around me was just precipice after death precipice after, imminent danger, fatal fall. And I'm like, we're supposed to get off of this thing wearing these slippery sticks on our legs? Are you crazy? So we ski over to where the run begins. And I swear that I could not see where the run is. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. All I see is there's snow, and then all of a sudden there isn't snow. So like you just want me to jump off the edge and believe that there's going to be something down there? Like, how crazy do you think I am? Now, it took some work, but let me tell you, I made it down, and I am not too proud to say that I definitely had to do a butt slide at one point. It was spring skiing, and I'm like, there was a point at which I'm just like, yeah, this is more than that I can handle today. My legs are feeling it a little bit, and that section right there looks like a broken leg waiting to happen. So, how about you hold my skis? I'm gonna do one of the really, glorious and graceful butt slides, and I'll meet you down at the other end. I'm so blessed by my guy. He's just like, sure, give me your skis, and when you stop, I'll come meet you. So, we make our way down. We get down the first section of the run, which is an area I'd never skied before. And when I'm skiing brand new terrain, I can't look at the view because it's pretty much a guaranteed I'll fall. So all I see is basically the 10 or 20 feet in front of my skis as I'm making my turns. And we reach a flat spot where the rest of the hill now begins to join up. You're starting to connect into the main runs that are running off some of the less advanced chairlifts. And all of a sudden I stop and I look around and I look up at where we'd come from. And I am amazed. We had just dropped 1,000 vertical feet in about 5 minutes. And that included the few minutes that I had to talk myself into getting off the precipice of this mountain and deciding whether or not I was going to ski the top section or do a very fancy butt slide, or how I was just about to get off of this mountain in the first place. I looked back and I looked at the view and I'm like, wow, I am so grateful that I challenged myself in this way and that I did this, because now, A, I can say, yeah, I did this, and B, I can really feel super proud of the fact that I took the risk, that I stepped out into the unknown. That's really what it all comes down to. When you're about to start a business, so let me link this back to something that's less all about skiing, but when you're about to start a business, everything is risk. You don't know what it's going to look like. You're starting something new. There is no roadmap that you can specifically follow. Yes, I give you valuable tools, and yes, I'm putting together some amazing options for you, and there are other people doing the same, but in the end, you are the one that 100% takes on the risk. Now, as soon as you even entertain the idea of stepping into that vulnerability, of taking on that risk, immediately all the monkey voices and the questions and the doubts and the fears start speaking up. Can I do this? Will it make money? What if it fails? What will people think? Do I believe in it and myself enough? If it becomes successful, which would be amazing, but does that mean that I'm going to lose my friends or my partner? Do I no longer get to rest? Am I working all the time? There's some big questions when we're looking at starting a business. I'm sure you've heard every story under the sun where, you start a new business and you're like, oh, this is going to be amazing. I can set my own hours. I can have all the flexibility I want. And all of a sudden you realize that people are just working all the time, and they're starting to miss out on time with their friends and with their family, and they seem to be missing out on the moments that really count because they're so busy trying to do all the things and make money. Now, there are thousands of reasons not to pursue starting a business and to simply stay in a good job and let that business idea of yours go. If you've been thinking about it, I know for sure that you have all the reasons running around in your head. So let's talk about the reward. Now, like I said, when I started skiing, there was a huge amount of risk involved. And every time that I tried some new terrain, there was no guarantee that I would make it. In fact, the very first time that I tried advanced terrain, literally on the first run off of a more advanced chair, I took a spill and twisted my ankle and did not have enough strength and had too much pain in my foot to be able to make it the rest of the way down the mountain. So I went upside down, backwards, down the hill in a ski patrol slide, which I can tell you was way more terrifying than anything else I'd ever done before. But that doesn't mean that I stopped there. That doesn't mean that I said, okay, that's it. This obviously isn't meant for me, or I'm obviously not good enough to do this. That season was almost at a close, so I didn't have a chance to challenge it again that season. But the next season, I felt much more confident. I'd had a whole season under my belt, and now I had a few extra days at the beginning of that season, and I tried it again and I nailed it. And I now go all the time. It's my home hill, so I'm on that terrain all the time, and I'm always challenging myself. I'm always trying to push it just a little bit further. Now, I'm not a crazy risk taker in the sense of I'm never going to be jumping off of cliffs, and I'm not the kind of person who likes skiing in between the trees because I just see that as a guaranteed way to, like ring my bell somehow by running into a tree. But I do make a point of pushing myself continuously. If I am not challenging myself, I'm not growing. And this is as true for my ski ability as it is in every other area of my life. And like I said, if I hadn't challenged myself, if I hadn't pushed past the risk of riding that chair to the very top of the mountain last weekend, I would not have had the reward of the amazing view and the feeling of accomplishment from being able to say, I did that. When it comes to skiing, and it's the same if you're running your own business, the end of the day, nobody else is responsible for that. Now, yeah, my guy had to carry my skis down for me for about 20 yards, but we're talking 20 yards out of 1,000 feet. That's nothing. So a little bit of help does not take away from the accomplishment that you've created. So if we're looking at business, what are possible rewards? Well, you could create a life that you are excited to live. You could have mornings where you wake up and you're just like, you know what? Yeah, I feel a little bit tired because I had a big weekend, or last night required a little bit more from me, but man, I'm excited to do this today. I love working with my clients. I'm really excited to bring my product or service out into the world. Maybe your reward is creating a financial future for your family that is secure, that is happy, that is stable. Maybe your reward is teaching others, and in teaching them, you're showing them that they can have a bigger life as well. These are amazing rewards. When I look at the risk versus the reward of starting this business, yeah, there's a risk that I'm putting in a lot of time and effort and money up front before ever seeing any variety of a sale. In fact, I've been at it for 6 months and I haven't even gotten to proposing a sale. Like that's some serious risk. I could be spending half a year or more creating something that I don't know for sure if it's going to work. I mean, I have a pretty darn good idea, but there are no guarantees. There's never any guarantees when it comes to starting a business. But the reward is that in taking up the risk of doing this business, I am growing. And I'm constantly pushing myself to challenge my boundaries, to try something different. This podcast is a perfect example. I had never done a podcast ever before in my life, and here we are on episode 9. I mean, that takes some lady balls to get through that, am I right? So think about the reward for you. Don't get stuck sitting in the risk of starting a business. You know, what could come? What could go wrong? I could be bankrupt. I could lose my house. I could be living in my car. I could be living in my parents' house. I mean, yeah, those are all possibilities. I won't lie to you. It's possible for that to happen. It's also possible that you'll create an amazing life, that you'll be excited to do what you're doing, that you create a future for you that has no financial ceiling. That itself is pretty amazing. So I want you to think carefully this week. If you're in that risk reward conversation with yourself and you're finding that your thoughts are primarily focused on the risk, on the possible broken legs or falls off of the chair into imminent death, I want you to challenge yourself to change your thinking. Think this week, what are the potential rewards? What good could I do through this business? How can I affect change in the world? If I see issues in my industry or issues with how these services are being provided, how could my starting a business make those issues go away? How can I change the status quo? Those become powerful questions. And now, rather than being entirely focused on the risk of starting a business, you're starting to look further. You're looking into the potential that this idea has. Now, the great thing is, every time you take up the challenge of a risk, almost every time you're rewarded, and that does not mean that the reward is that you've nailed it. Reward is not always a positive thing. Sometimes the reward is that you fall on your ass and you're like, well, this didn't work out. And what an amazing opportunity to learn. I love my guy keeps reminding me when we're out in the ski hill, if you're not falling, you're not learning. And I gotta tell you, every time I'm out skiing, I am always thinking about how similar it is learning how to ski and starting a business. Now, if you've never skied a day in your life or you started when you're really young, then maybe you don't notice that much. But if you're doing any activity right now, which involves a fair amount of risk, I don't care whether it's a sport, whether it's some kind of a personal challenge that you're doing, I would ask you to have a look at it. Okay, what's the risk that's involved with this? When I overcome this risk, what's the great potential beyond that? Why am I willing to challenge or to take on the risk that's involved in this activity? What do I get out of it? And how can I translate that into starting a business? Because the cool thing is when you start to correlate things across, all of a sudden you'll see that starting a business isn't really that dissimilar from something else that you've tried. It's all about new experiences. And it's so important to keep having new experiences because that's how you learn and that's how you grow. So I have this really fantastic journal that my sister-in-law actually gave me for Christmas this year, and it is intended as a planning journal. So it's a planning tool more so than it is a journal, although it does have moments for gratitudes and other things that are more journally focused. But every day gets a new set of pages. So it's a 2-page spread for every single day. And inside that spread, I include my daily tasks, what I'm working towards, a couple of goals that I'm focusing on that day. And every page set has a quote. And I love today's quote because it ties in perfectly to the topic that I was thinking about for this podcast, which was the risk reward conversation. And this comes from Brian Tracy. He says, "I've found that luck is quite predictable. If you want more luck, take more chances. Be more active, show up more often." That quote is all about taking risk. He doesn't say it's unpredictable and it's totally up to the winds of fate. And oh, by the way, don't take risk. Don't try something new. Don't put yourself out there. That's not what he's saying. He's saying if you want to feel lucky, and I'm using air quotes here, then you gotta take chances. The more often you show up, the more often you'll have the possibility of overcoming that risk and gaining that reward. With that, I'm going to sign off for this week. It has been my sincere pleasure sitting with you today. And I know that this is maybe a little bit longer than some other podcasts that I have. So I trust that you have found some amazing value in what I've talked about today. And if you are thinking about starting a business or you've been having that risk reward conversation and you're just like, oh my goodness, Amy, I think this would be amazing, but I don't have any idea where to start. I've totally got your back. I have a 10 steps to launch download for you. It is a free download, and I very specifically put it together for you to get you through the beginning stages of launching your business. If you do all 10 steps, by the end, you will have a fully realized business. You will have launched it in the eyes of the government and in the eyes of the public. So that's pretty cool. It basically means you're going from, okay, I kind of have this idea through some really important steps, key steps that you need to take in order to get your business going, all the way through to having it in reality. Now, that download is absolutely free. I've created it specifically for you. So, to take advantage of it, go to daretobegin.net/10 steps. And it's the number 10 steps. So, again, it's daretobegin.net/the number 10 steps. Grab that free download and get going. You have an amazing dream inside of you. I've talked about this before and I'll touch on it very briefly here. Not everybody gets the dream that you have. Not everybody gets that idea that's dropped into your head. You've been given this business idea for a very specific reason. It's not because someone else is intended to bring it into the world. It's because you are. You are unique. I know we hear that all the time. We think, well, everybody's unique. And so really, how unique are we? Your fingerprints have never existed before and will never exist again. That's pretty darn unique. Don't ever think that you're not one of a kind. Don't ever think that you don't have what it takes. If that's where you're at, go ahead and check out episode number 7, where I talk about how do you know if you have what it takes. But take the risk. Step into it. Take up the challenge of what you want to bring into the world, because I promise if you step into the risk, the reward is worth it. And sometimes it takes a bit of time and it takes you swallowing your fear and doing along anyway, but the reward is totally worth it. So grab your download, daretobegin.net/10 steps, and I look so forward to seeing you again next week. Same time, same place. I'm excited to see you then. Have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you soon.